I always thought I had a good marriage until I heard my husband's voice floating through our kitchen window that evening. You're better than her in every way, he was saying, his tone dripping with an affection I hadn't heard in years. I can't wait to make you my wife. I'm Nadine, and that was the moment my world crumbled around me. The wine glass I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, shattering on our back patio. Through the window, I could see Colin and Danielle spring apart like guilty teenagers. My husband and my best friend, illuminated by our garden lights, looking at me with matching expressions of horror. Nadine, Danielle's voice quavered. We were just what? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Planning your wedding? Earlier that evening, we'd hosted a dinner party, something we did every month. Colin had insisted on inviting Danielle, as always. Now I understood why. You should go inside, Colin said, his face hardening into that familiar dismissive expression I'd grown to hate. You're making a scene. A scene? I laughed, the sound harsh in my throat, like the scene you two have been making behind my back. Danielle stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hands raised in surrender. Let me explain. How long? I demanded, stepping over the broken glass. How long has this been going on? Neither answered. Their silence told me everything. Nadine, be reasonable, Colin said, using the same condescending tone he'd used last week when I'd told him about my business idea. You know things haven't been working between us. Things haven't been working, I repeated. Is that what you tell yourself to justify sleeping with my best friend? You're always focused on these ridiculous business schemes, he shot back. Playing entrepreneur when you should be focusing on our marriage. Danielle understands what a wife should be. The words hit like physical blows. For years, I'd watched him dismiss my dreams, belittle my ambitions. Every time I'd suggested starting my own company, he'd laughed it off. Stick to what you know, he'd say, patting my hand like I was a child. I understand what it takes to make a marriage work, Danielle added, her voice soft with fake sympathy. Sometimes people just grow apart. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably my sister Adeline checking in after leaving the dinner party early. I ignored it, focusing instead on the way Colin's hand had found its way to Danielle's lower back, protective and possessive. You know what's funny? I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. I actually felt guilty for boring you at dinner with my latest business proposal. I was going to apologize for talking too much about market research and property values. Nobody wants to hear about that stuff at dinner, Nadine, Colin sighed. It's embarrassing. Embarrassing? My voice rose. You want to talk about embarrassing? How about the fact that my husband and best friend are planning their wedding while I'm still wearing my ring? Inside the house, I could see our dinner guests starting to notice the commotion. Jayla, Colin's sister, was pressing her face against the window, confusion written across her features. Keep your voice down, Colin hissed. You're being hysterical. Hysterical? I stepped closer, my heel crunching on broken glass. I'll show you hysterical. But instead of screaming or throwing things like they clearly expected, I simply pulled off my wedding ring and dropped it into Colin's favourite whiskey glass, still half full on the patio table. Congratulations on your engagement, I said, my voice ice cold. I hope you'll be very happy together. As I turned to walk away, Danielle called after me. Nadine, wait, we never meant to hurt you. I spun back around. You know what hurts the most, Danielle? Last month, when I confided in you about feeling distant from Colin, you told me to work harder on my marriage. Were you sleeping with him then, or did that come later? Her silence was answer enough. Nadine, Colin started, but I cut him off. Don't worry about the dinner guests, I said, already heading for the door. I'm sure you two can entertain them with stories about how I'm not good enough, how I'm just a dreamer who doesn't understand reality. That seems to be your specialty. As I walked through our house, soon to be just his house, I could hear the murmurs of our guests, see their shocked faces. But I didn't stop. I grabbed my car keys and my purse, and I walked out the front door with my head held high. It wasn't until I was in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, that I allowed myself to cry. My phone buzzed again, Adeline's name lighting up the screen. This time I answered it. Aid? My voice cracked. I need a place to stay tonight. You're not going back there, Adeline declared, pushing a steaming mug of tea across her kitchen counter. You can stay here as long as you need. 3 days had passed since the dinner party and I'd barely slept. My phone was flooded with messages, some from concerned friends, others from Colin demanding I stop being dramatic and come home. I have to go back eventually, I said, staring into my tea, at least to get my things. Then I'm coming with you. Adeline's tone left no room for argument. We'll go when we know he's at work. But when we pulled up to the house later that morning, Colin's car was in the driveway, so was Danielle's. Turn around, I said quickly, but Adeline was already parking. No way, she said, unbuckling her seatbelt. This is your house too. You have every right to be here. Inside, we found them in the living room, surrounded by boxes. Danielle froze when she saw me, a framed photo of our wedding day in her hands. What are you doing? I asked, though the answer was obvious. Packing up your things, Colin said, not meeting my eyes. I thought it would be easier. Easier for who? Adeline cut in. For you to move your girlfriend in faster? I'm trying to be considerate, he snapped. I laughed bitterly. Considerate would have been not sleeping with my best friend. Former best friend, Danielle corrected quietly, and something in me snapped. You're right, I said, snatching the wedding photo from her hands. My best friend died the moment she decided to betray me. Nadine, Colin sighed, using his reasonable voice. We need to discuss the divorce settlement. I've already talked to my lawyer. Of course you have, I interrupted. Always efficient when it comes to getting what you want. I headed upstairs to our bedroom, now stripped of anything that made it ours. My clothes were already packed in boxes, my books stacked neatly beside them. As I started checking drawers to ensure nothing was missed, I found it, the letter from Mom. She'd written it before she died last year, separate letters for each of us kids. I'd never opened mine, too afraid of what final words she might have left me. With trembling hands, I broke the seal. My dearest Nadine, it began. I've watched you dim your light for others, especially Colin. Don't let anyone convince you that your dreams are too big or that you're not capable. You have my business sense and your father's determination. Use them both. Tears blurred my vision as I read on. Remember when you were 10 and you set up that lemonade stand? You didn't just sell lemonade. You created different flavors, hired your sister to help, even convinced the neighbors to let you set up satellite stands in their yards. You made enough to buy that bike you wanted. That's who you are. Innovative, determined, unstoppable. Don't let anyone make you forget that. What's that? Colin's voice made me jump. He was standing in the doorway watching me. Nothing that concerns you anymore. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into my pocket. Look, he said, stepping closer. I know you're hurt, but you have to understand. Danielle and I, we connect on a different level. She supports my goals, doesn't challenge everything like you do. You mean she doesn't have any goals of her own? I corrected him. She's content living in your shadow. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're always pushing, always wanting more. It's exhausting. You're right, I said, standing up straighter. I do want more. I want a life where I'm valued, where my dreams matter. Thank you for showing me I'll never have that with you. Adeline appeared in the doorway. The car's loaded with your boxes, ready to go? I nodded, but Colin blocked the door. We need to discuss the house. I think it's fair if... Fair? Adeline scoffed. Like how fair it was when you were screwing her best friend. Get out of my way, Colin, I said quietly. My lawyer will be in touch about the house and everything else. Your lawyer? He laughed. Since when do you have a lawyer? Since I decided to stop letting you make all my decisions. I pushed past him, Mom's letter burning like a talisman in my pocket. As we drove away, Adeline glanced at me. You okay? No, I admitted. But I will be. I pulled out Mom's letter, running my fingers over her familiar handwriting. I think it's time I started that business I've been dreaming about. Really? Adeline's face lit up. What's the first step? I smiled, feeling stronger than I had in days. First, we call Valerie Duncan. Remember that successful real estate developer Mom used to work with? I think it's time I asked for some advice. The key to real estate isn't just buying and selling properties, Valerie said, spreading out a map of our town on her office desk. It's seeing potential where others don't. 2 weeks had passed since I'd left Colin, and I'd spent every day absorbing everything Valerie could teach me. She'd been my mother's colleague and friend, and when I called, she didn't hesitate to help. Look here, she pointed to a neglected area of town. Everyone's focused on the trendy downtown developments, but this neighborhood? It's a gold mine waiting to happen. That's where the old factory district is, I said, leaning closer. Exactly. And with the new transit line coming through, those properties are going to skyrocket in value. The door opened, and my father walked in, his face tight with concern. Nadine, what are you doing? Working, Dad, I replied, not looking up from the map. Valerie's helping me start my business. A business? He sighed heavily. Honey, you're going through a divorce. This isn't the time to make rash decisions. Wayne, Valerie interjected, your daughter has a natural talent for this, just like Sarah did. The mention of my mother made him pause. Sarah had years of experience. And I'm getting mine now, I cut in. I've already found 3 potential properties. With what money? He demanded. You're living with your sister. Actually, Valerie smiled, she's secured her first investor. Me. Dad's jaw dropped. You're investing in this? I am. And if you'd stop underestimating your daughter for 5 minutes, you might see what I see, what Sarah always saw. My phone buzzed. Another message from Colin. I ignored it. Show him the proposal, Valerie encouraged. I pulled out my laptop, opening the presentation I'd been working on. These factory buildings, they're perfect for conversion into mixed-use spaces. Apartments above, retail below. The neighborhood's already showing signs of revival, and with the right development, it could transform the whole area, Dad finished, his expression softening slightly. Your mother used to talk about this district. I know, I said quietly. I found her old notes in some of the boxes I brought from the house. Speaking of the house, Valerie interrupted. Stephen Barnes is here to discuss your divorce proceedings. Right on cue, Stephen walked in, briefcase in hand. Good news, Nadine. Given the circumstances of your separation, we're in a strong position to negotiate. I don't want to negotiate, I said firmly. I want to sell. Let Colin buy me out. I need the capital for my first property purchase. Are you sure? Dad asked. That house is full of memories I'd rather forget, I finished. It's time for a fresh start. Stephen nodded, making notes. I'll draft the papers. But there's something else you should know. Colin and Danielle have been looking at properties in the Heights district. My stomach clenched. The Heights was the most prestigious neighborhood in town, where all the old money families lived. Let me guess, I said bitterly. They want their dream home? They've made offers on several properties, Stephen confirmed. All rejected so far. The sellers there are particular about buyers. Valerie's eyes sparkled. You know what would be interesting? If someone with vision bought up some key properties in that area. For investment purposes, of course. I caught her meaning immediately. Of course, purely business. Nadine, Dad warned, don't let revenge drive your business decisions. It's not revenge, Dad. It's strategy. I turned back to the map. Besides, why shouldn't I invest in the Heights? The returns would help fund my factory district project. Now you're thinking like a developer, Valerie grinned. Stephen, draw up the papers for our first property purchase, the old Wilson factory on 3rd Street. As Stephen worked, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Danielle. Can we talk? Please? There's so much I need to explain. I deleted the message without responding. One more thing, Valerie said, pulling out another document. I think you should consider rebranding yourself. New business, new name. She slid a business card across the desk. It read, Phoenix Properties, rising from the ashes. Phoenix, I tested the word. I like it. Your mother would be proud, Dad said quietly, and I looked up to see tears in his eyes. She always said you had it in you. I should have listened. It's not too late, I replied, reaching for his hand. Want to hear about my plans for the factory district? He pulled up a chair. Tell me everything. Me. As I launched into my presentation, I felt stronger than I had in years. Colin had always told me my dreams were too big, but sitting there with Valerie's support, my father's growing interest, and my mother's spirit guiding me, I knew the truth. My dreams weren't too big. He was too small. And with that signature, the Wilson factory is officially yours, Stephen announced, sliding the papers across his desk. Your first major property acquisition. 6 months had passed, and Phoenix Properties was no longer just a dream. The old factory was already undergoing renovations, with 3 retail spaces pre-leased. I can't believe how fast everything's moving, Adeline said, squeezing my hand. Have you seen the local business journal? They're calling you the rising star of real estate development. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a text from Valerie. Turn on Channel 6, now. Adeline grabbed the remote for Stephen's office TV, flipping to the local news. There, standing in front of the most prestigious mansion in the Heights, were Colin and Danielle. The historic Bradford Mansion, crown jewel of the Heights district, is finally on the market, the reporter announced. Local executive Colin Richardson and his fiancée Danielle Armstrong are among the potential buyers. This house represents everything we've dreamed of, Danielle gushed to the camera. It's perfect for starting our new life together. Mute it, I said sharply. I've heard enough. Are you okay? Adeline asked. I'm fine. I straightened my blazer. Stephen, what do you know about the Bradford Mansion? He raised an eyebrow. It's been in the same family for generations. The current owner is looking to sell, but she's very particular about buyers. Wants to ensure the property's legacy is preserved. Interesting. I pulled out my phone. What's her name? Margaret Bradford. She's actually a friend of Valerie's. I was already dialing. Valerie, I need a favour. Can you arrange a meeting with Margaret Bradford? 2 days later, I sat in Margaret's elegant sitting room, sipping tea from bone china cups. I must say, Margaret said, studying me over her glasses, when Valerie told me about you, I was intrigued. Your restoration of the Wilson factory is quite impressive. Thank you. I believe in preserving history while adapting to the future. Unlike some potential buyers, she sniffed, who seem more interested in status than substance. You mean Colin and Danielle? I kept my voice neutral. I know them. Oh? Her eyes sharpened with interest. Colin is my soon-to-be ex-husband. Danielle was my best friend. They're getting married. Margaret set down her cup with a decisive clink. How absolutely dreadful. And now they want my house? They want a trophy, I corrected. I want to preserve a legacy. Do tell. I pulled out my proposal. I see this property as more than just a mansion. With the right renovations, the East Wing could become a community art gallery. The gardens could host local events. We could maintain its historical significance while making it part of the community's future. Margaret's eyes lit up. That's exactly what my grandfather always wanted. But the cost of such renovations would be covered by my company. I've already secured the funding. She studied me for a long moment. You know, dear, revenge can be a powerful motivator. This isn't about revenge, I said, then paused. Well, not entirely. It's about proving something to myself. The best revenge often is. She smiled. Let's discuss numbers. A week later, I was signing another set of papers in Stephen's office when my phone rang. It was Jayla, Colin's sister. Is it true? She demanded. Did you buy the Bradford Mansion? News travels fast. Colin is furious. He and Danielle had already told everyone they were getting it. They shouldn't have counted their mansions before they closed, I said dryly. He's saying you only did it to spite them. No, I corrected. I did it because it's a sound business investment. Spiting them is just a bonus. After hanging up, I turned to find Adeline grinning. You know they're planning their wedding for next month, right? I heard. And you now own their dream house. I do. So what's your plan? I smiled, thinking of the mansion's sprawling grounds and elegant architecture. I think it's time Phoenix Properties made a wedding gift gesture. You're not serious, Stephen interjected. Oh, but I am. I picked up my coat. They want the Bradford mansion? Let's make sure they get exactly what they wish for, just not quite how they imagined it. As we left the office, Adeline linked her arm through mine. You know, when you first started this business, I worried you were doing it for the wrong reasons. And now? Now I see you're doing it for all the right ones. You're not just getting even, you're getting ahead. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, crushed by betrayal and doubt. That woman would never have imagined owning the Bradford mansion, let alone having a thriving business. Getting ahead, I repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. The wedding invitation arrived today, Adeline announced, waving the cream-coloured envelope as she walked into my office at Phoenix Properties. They actually had the nerve to send you one. I took the envelope, running my fingers over the embossed gold lettering. Colin Richardson and Danielle Armstrong request the honour of your presence. Are you going to go? Adeline asked, perching on my desk. Before I could answer, Valerie burst in, her face flushed with excitement. You won't believe what I just heard. Danielle's been bragging at the country club about their wedding plans. Let me guess, they're still pretending they're getting the Bradford mansion. Better, Valerie grinned. They're telling everyone they're in negotiations with the new owner. That's you. And they're confident they'll be moving in right after the honeymoon. I laughed. Confident, are they? They don't know you own it, Adeline realised. They think some investment company bought it. Phoenix Properties is an investment company, I reminded her, then turned to Valerie. Have they made an offer yet? Their realtor called this morning. They're offering well above market value. I pulled out the folder I'd been preparing. Perfect timing. Stephen and I have been working on something special. What kind of something special? Adeline asked. Before I could explain, my father walked in. Nadine, we need to talk about this wedding situation. Dad, just hear me out. He held up his hands. I know you're hurt, and you have every right to be. But this plan of yours, are you sure it's wise? Actually, I said, opening the folder, it's more than wise, it's brilliant. Stephen helped me draft this contract. It's completely legal and absolutely binding. Valerie picked up the document, her eyes widening as she read. Oh, this is delicious. What is it? Adeline grabbed the papers. A very special wedding gift, I explained. We're going to offer them the Bradford mansion at their asking price, with some very specific conditions. Conditions? Dad looked worried. Nothing unreasonable, I assured him. Just some carefully worded clauses about property use, maintenance requirements, and community obligations. All very standard in historical property sales. And very expensive to maintain, Valerie added with a knowing smile. The best part, I continued, once they sign, they're locked in. No backing out without massive penalties. But why would they sign without reading the fine print? Dad asked. Because they're desperate to close before the wedding, Valerie explained. They've been telling everyone they'll be moving in afterward. Their egos won't let them admit defeat. Plus, Adeline added, reading the contract, these conditions are buried in legal jargon. They'll be so excited about getting the house they won't look too closely. Exactly. I took back the contract. They think they're getting their dream home. What they're actually getting is a money pit with strict usage requirements and astronomical maintenance costs. Nadine, Dad sighed. I know they hurt you. This isn't about hurt anymore, Dad. This is about consequences. They thought I was too stupid to succeed without Colin, too weak to survive their betrayal. Well, now they'll learn exactly what I'm capable of. My phone buzzed. A text from Stephen. Offer received from C&D. Ready to proceed? It's your call, Valerie said softly. But remember, whatever you do, make sure you can live with it. I looked at the wedding invitation still sitting on my desk, then at the contract in my hands. Send them the counter-offer, I texted back. And Stephen, make sure it arrives during their engagement party tonight. How do you know about their engagement party? Adeline asked. Jayla told me. She's still feeling guilty about not seeing what her brother was doing. Will they sign? Dad asked. They will, Valerie assured him. People like Colin and Danielle care more about appearances than details. They'll see what they want to see. I picked up the wedding invitation again, finally opening it. Inside was a handwritten note from Danielle. I know we can never be friends again, but I hope someday you'll understand that everything happens for a reason. You're right, Danielle, I murmured. Everything does happen for a reason. I checked the RSVP card marking will attend with a flourish. You're really going to their wedding? Adeline asked, incredulous. Of course, I smiled. I have to deliver my gift in person. As my family exchanged worried looks, I felt a strange sense of calm. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Colin and Danielle had tried to break me, but instead, they'd forced me to become stronger than ever. Trust me, I said, putting the invitation away. Their wedding day is going to be unforgettable. The church bells chimed as I walked in, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue dress that had cost more than my entire wardrobe from my married days. Heads turned, whispers followed. I can't believe she actually came, someone muttered. Bold move, another replied. Jayla intercepted me before I could find my seat. Nadine, I didn't think you'd really come. And miss my ex-husband marrying my ex-best friend. Wouldn't dream of it. They signed the contract for the Bradford mansion last night, she said, lowering her voice. Colin's been insufferable about it. Keeps talking about how they won. I smiled. Did they? Before she could respond, the wedding planner started herding everyone to their seats. I chose one near the back, perfect for observing without being obvious. Adeline slipped in beside me. You don't have to stay, I whispered. Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss this for the world. The ceremony began with all the pomp you'd expect from a couple desperate to prove something. Danielle floated down the aisle in a dress that probably cost as much as my first property investment. Colin beamed at her with the same look he'd once given me. Dearly beloved, the priest began, and I felt Adeline squeeze my hand. I'm fine, I assured her, and I was. Watching them exchange vows, I felt nothing but a detached sort of pity. They looked perfect together, both so focused on appearances, on proving they'd made the right choice. The reception was held in the grand ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel. I waited until after dinner, after the toasts, after their first dance. Timing was everything. Speech! Someone called out as Danielle finished thanking everyone for coming. Nadine should give a speech. The room fell silent. Colin's face darkened, but Danielle, probably thinking she could prove how amicable everything was, smiled and gestured for me to stand. I rose slowly, champagne glass in hand. I'd like to present the happy couple with their wedding gift. Nadine, Colin warned, but I was already signalling to Stephen, who approached with an elegantly wrapped package. Open it, I encouraged. I insist. Danielle, perhaps hoping to diffuse the tension, began unwrapping the package. Inside was a framed document, their signed contract for the Bradford mansion, with a red bow attached. I don't understand, she said, frowning. Read it, I suggested. Particularly the parts about the historical preservation requirements, mandatory community access, and annual maintenance costs. Colin snatched the frame, his eyes scanning the document. His face went from confused to angry to pale. What is this? He demanded. Your dream home, I replied sweetly. Owned by Phoenix Properties, my company. You signed the contract last night, remember? So eager to close the deal before the wedding. Danielle grabbed the contract, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling. These requirements, these costs. Oh yes, I continued loud enough for everyone to hear. The mansion must maintain its historical integrity, which means no modern renovations. The grounds must be open to the public 3 days a week for historical tours. And the maintenance costs? Well, historical properties don't come cheap. You can't do this, Colin sputtered. Actually, I can. You signed the contract, legally binding as your lawyer will confirm. If you'd bothered to have one review it before signing. You tricked us, Danielle accused. No, you tricked yourselves. So desperate to prove you'd won, you didn't even read what you were signing. The whispers around the room grew louder. I could see Colin's business associates exchanging glances, probably reconsidering their deals with a man who'd sign a contract without reading it. "We'll fight this," Colin threatened. "You're welcome to try," I smiled. "But everything's legal. Ask your lawyer, after you've hired one, that is." I set down my champagne glass and picked up my purse. "Congratulations on your wedding and your new home. I'm sure you'll make many memories there. During the 4 days a week, you're allowed to use it privately." As I walked toward the exit, Jayla caught up with me. "That was brutal," she said, but she was grinning. "That was business," I corrected her. "They wanted the Bradford mansion? Now they have it, along with all the responsibilities and restrictions that come with owning a historical property." "They'll be bankrupted by the maintenance costs alone," she realized. "Only if they're bad with money," I shrugged. "But then, we already know how well Colin reads contracts." At the door, I turned back one last time. Colin and Danielle were huddled with their parents, frantically reading through the contract. Their perfect wedding had turned into exactly what they deserved, a harsh lesson in consequences. "Ready to go?" Adeline asked, appearing at my side. "More than ready," I replied. "I have a meeting tomorrow about expanding the factory district project." As we left, the sound of Colin's angry voice followed us. "What do you mean we can't back out of the contract?" I smiled. Sometimes Karma needed a little help, and I was happy to assist. "They're suing us," Stephen announced, dropping a thick folder on my desk 3 weeks after the wedding. "Claiming fraudulent misrepresentation." "Let them," Valerie said from her seat by the window. "Every lawyer in town has already seen that contract. It's ironclad." My phone buzzed. Another message from Danielle. "Please, we need to talk. The maintenance costs alone are destroying us." "They've already missed their first maintenance payment," Stephen continued. "The Historical Society is not happy." "Neither is the community board," Valerie added. "The mansion was supposed to be open for tours yesterday, but they kept the gates locked. I was about to respond when my office door burst open. Colin stormed in, his face red with anger, Danielle trailing behind him. "You vindictive witch!" he spat. "You set us up." "Actually," I replied calmly, "you set yourselves up. I merely provided the opportunity." "We can't afford these payments," Danielle pleaded. "The Historical Society is demanding immediate repairs to the East Wing. The garden needs thousands in maintenance." "All clearly outlined in the contract you signed," Stephen interjected. "A contract you deliberately made impossible to fulfill," Colin shouted. "Impossible?" I stood up. "Like it was impossible for me to succeed without you? Like my business dreams were impossible?" "That's different." "No, it's not. You thought I was incapable of running a business. You mocked my ambitions. Well, guess what? I'm not just running a business. I'm running the business that owns your dream house." "We'll lose everything," Danielle whispered. "Like I lost everything." I turned to her. "My marriage, my best friend, my trust, all gone in an instant because of your choices." "We made a mistake," she admitted. "We know that now." "The only mistake you made was underestimating me." I picked up the contract. "Everything in here is legal and standard for historical properties. If you'd bothered to read it, or consult a lawyer, you'd have known what you were getting into." "Just let us out of the contract," Colin demanded. "There's a clause for that," Stephen said helpfully. "Section 23, paragraph B. They can terminate the contract for a fee of 3 times the purchase price." Colin's face went pale. "That's millions." "Then I suggest you start giving those historical tours," I said. "The admission fees might help with the maintenance costs." "You've destroyed us," Danielle sobbed. "No, you destroyed yourselves. Your arrogance, your entitlement, your belief that you could take whatever you wanted without consequences. That's what destroyed you." A commotion in the outer office drew our attention. My father walked in, followed by Jayla. "What's going on here?" Dad asked, taking in the scene. "Your daughter is ruining our lives," Colin exploded. "Actually," Jayla cut in, "you ruined your own lives. I've seen the contract. It's exactly what any responsible historical property owner should expect." "Whose side are you on?" Colin demanded of his sister. The side of karma, apparently, she replied. There's another option, I said quietly. You can sell the property. Hope flickered across their faces. But, I continued, due to the historical property restrictions, it can only be sold to an approved buyer. And currently, the only approved buyer is Phoenix Properties. At a quarter of what we paid, Colin realised, reading the clause Stephen was pointing to. You planned this all along? I planned to succeed, I corrected him. Something you never thought I could do. We'll fight this in court, he threatened. You'll lose, Stephen said simply. Every clause is legal, every requirement standard for historical properties. Your signature is on every page. Danielle sank into a chair, her designer dress crumpling. What do we do? You have 3 choices, I said. Keep the property and meet all requirements, buy your way out of the contract for triple the price, or sell it back to Phoenix Properties at a loss. Your decision. You're enjoying this, Colin accused. No, I replied honestly. I'm not enjoying your pain. I'm enjoying watching you finally face consequences for your actions. Come on, Jayla said to her brother. I'll help you find a good lawyer, one who actually reads contracts before letting clients sign them. As they left, my father turned to me. That was quite something. Too harsh? I asked. He shook his head. No, sometimes the best lessons are the hardest ones. They'll probably sell, Valerie predicted. Their pride won't let them give historical tours to the community they bragged to about owning the mansion. And when they do, Stephen added, Phoenix Properties will have acquired the Bradford mansion at a significant discount. I looked out my office window at the city skyline, thinking about how far I'd come from the woman who'd overheard her husband's betrayal in their garden. You know what the best part is? I said. This isn't even about them anymore. It's about what comes next. And what comes next? Dad asked. I smiled, pulling out my plans for the Bradford Mansion's Community Arts Centre. Something impossible. The Bradford Community Arts Centre, I read from the newly installed plaque, running my fingers over the engraved letters. What do you think, Mom? I placed fresh flowers beneath the memorial bench we'd installed in the mansion's garden. The morning sun caught the dew on the roses, making them sparkle. She would have loved this, Dad said, joining me, especially the youth art program. Ms. Davis! A group of art students waved as they entered through the mansion's front doors, portfolios tucked under their arms. The building that Colin and Danielle had wanted to turn into their private showcase was now alive with creativity and purpose. Ready for the board meeting? Valerie asked, approaching with a stack of papers. The factory district development numbers are impressive. Before I could answer, Adeline rushed over, practically bouncing with excitement. You'll never guess who I just saw at the coffee shop. Who? Colin and Danielle. They're moving to another state. Apparently his new job isn't quite as prestigious as his old one. I heard they had to sell their car to cover the mansion's contract termination penalties, Valerie added. Are you happy now? Dad asked quietly. I thought about it watching another group of students enter the mansion. I'm not happy about their suffering. I'm happy about what we've created here. Speaking of creation, Adeline grinned, wait until you see today's local business journal. She pulled out the magazine and there it was, my face on the cover. Phoenix Rising, How Nadine Davis Transformed City Development. The writer did a good job, Valerie noted, especially the part about combining profitable development with community impact. Ms. Davis, a teenage girl approached shyly. Could you look at my portfolio? My art teacher says I might qualify for the scholarship program. Of course, I smiled, gesturing toward the mansion. Let's go to the gallery. Inside, the mansion's grand rooms had been transformed into light-filled gallery spaces. Local artists' work hung alongside student pieces, the walls alive with colour and creativity. I remember when you first told me about your business dreams, Dad said as we walked through the gallery. I was like Colin. I didn't believe in you. I'm sorry for that. You changed your mind, I reminded him. That's what matters. Ms. Davis? Stephen appeared at the gallery entrance. The board is ready for you. In the converted library, now our conference room, the board members waited, Among them sat Jayla, who joined Phoenix Properties after leaving her brother's company. "Before we begin," she said, "I should tell you, Colin and Danielle signed the final settlement papers this morning. The mansion is officially, completely yours." "Good," I nodded. "Now we can focus on what matters. The factory district development is creating affordable housing, the arts centre is providing education opportunities, and Phoenix Properties is more successful than ever," Valerie finished proudly. After the meeting, I found myself back in the garden. A young couple was taking wedding photos by the fountain. We'd started renting the grounds for events to help fund the art programs. "Excuse me?" the bride called out. "Are you Nadine Davis, the owner?" I nodded. "Thank you for making this place accessible to everyone," she said. "We could never afford one of those exclusive venues, but this is perfect." As they returned to their photos, Adeline joined me. "Remember when you thought this place would just be your revenge?" It was never just about revenge, I realised. It was about proving something to myself. And what was that? That sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about creating something meaningful from the ashes of what they destroyed. My phone buzzed with a text from Danielle. "I understand now. What we did to you was unforgivable. But what you've done with the mansion, it's incredible. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you." I showed the message to Adeline. "Are you going to respond?" she asked. "No," I said, putting the phone away. Some chapters need to stay closed. The garden was filling with people. Artists setting up easels, families spreading picnic blankets, students sketching the flowering trees. This was what success looked like. Not the empty victory of revenge, but the lasting triumph of creation. "Ready to head back to the office?" Valerie called from the path. "We have that meeting about expanding the art program to the factory district." "Actually," I said, "let's have the meeting here." In the garden. As we settled onto the benches, I looked up at the mansion. No longer a symbol of what I'd lost, but a testament to what I'd found. My strength, my purpose, my true success. "So," I smiled, pulling out the expansion plans. "Let's talk about what's next. About what's next. About what's next. About what's next. About what's next."